Developing story. The federal government today confirming former Liberal Justice Minister and human rights activist Irwin Cotler was the target of an alleged Iranian assassination attempt. Details of the alleged plot, which was foiled by law enforcement, were first reported by the Globe and Mail and confirmed to us by Cotler's office yesterday. Mr. Cotler has been a long-time and vocal critic of the Iranian regime and its sponsorship of terrorism. He joins us live now. Hi, Mr. Cotler. Good to see you. Thanks so much for making the time.
Not at all. Good to speak with you.
How are you, first of all? I'm glad to see you safe and sound. How are you doing, though, with this information? I guess you've known about it for a bit, but being in the public domain now.
Well, you know, I've been under this security protection now for a little over a year because the threat first arose over a year ago, and I've had the best of security protection, and I've just continued with my work and my advocacy because it's not really about me. What we're talking here about is a phenomenon of transnational repression and assassination. And Iran has begun to target now in a more intensified way dissidents, human rights defenders, political leaders, etc. And it's a phenomenon that represents really a threat to our national security, our national sovereignty, our collective human rights. And so the community of democracies has to see this, in my case, as one illustration of it, as really a wake-up call for the community of democracies to hold the Iranian regime accountable, to combat their culture of impunity, and in particular, to show solidarity with the Iranian people who are the targets of massive domestic repression, along with the Iranian transnational repression. It's a confluence of both. And so we need to hold them accountable, combat the culture of impunity on behalf really of our collective national security.
And I do want to ask you about the mechanisms to do that in a second. But first, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of Canadians who read that news yesterday with great concern for you. And I know that law enforcement was successful in intercepting this attempt. Are you worried about future attempts, given what you know about the Iranian regime and the transnational aggression they are showing?
Well, as I say, I have excellent protection. And at this point, I don't worry about it because I think part of the objective of the Iranian regime is to silence, to intimidate, to harass. And I think we cannot indulge that. We have to, on the other hand, as I say, combat it. And we have to hold the Iranian regime accountable at the same time as we show solidarity with the Iranian people. I always distinguish between the Iranian regime and the Iranian people, who are the targets of mass domestic repression by this regime. And the community of democracies now has to hold it accountable.
So when you talk about holding it accountable, I remember interviewing you a multitude of times in which you talked about listing the IRGC as a terrorist entity. That finally happened in June. We spoke to Vassy Kapelos yesterday, who talked about more coordination among the G7 in particular against sort of the alignment of Iran and other autocracies. What can the federal government do, in your view, former minister, I should say, Mr. Cotler, in order to seek and accomplish the kind of accountability you're describing?
Well, I think Vassy Kapelos was right when she said the involvement in the partnership. Canada, for example, is hosting the next meeting of the G7, and so we should make the issue of Iranian transnational repression and domestic repression a priority on the G7 agenda. Within the Canadian government, we should set up a special agency with respect to combating that transnational repression and assassination as a phenomenon. For example, we have this foreign interference inquiry, but that inquiry is dealt only with the issue of foreign electoral interference. That's just one component of transnational repression. We have also the massive disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. We have the targeting of dissidents, of diaspora communities and with exile. We have the targeting of journalists. We have the targeting of human rights defenders. And in particular, we have also the targeted assassinations that we see. And I'm just one example of it. But as I said, we've seen this elsewhere. So we need a particular department to deal with it. We need a victims framework that can kind of hotline with regard to those who are the targets of this national repression. And we have to see to it that we work in a concerted way amongst the community of democracies and make this a priority on our agenda as a matter of principle and policy.
Okay, Mr. Cotler, I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm glad to see that you're doing well, and I appreciate you making the time for the conversation tonight. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Good speaking with you.